You're listening to the Free to Be Mindful podcast, which provides bite-sized tips for busy parents, educators, and anyone working with kids. These real talk conversations focus on mindful living, mental health, and personal growth, helping all to learn, grow, and inspire with mindfulness in mind. I'm your host, Vanessa de Jesus Guzman, educator, licensed professional counselor, entrepreneur, and mom. I'm passionate about helping folks live life with peace of mind and ease of heart while not losing their, well, you know, here we go. Hello and welcome to episode 143 of the Free to Be Mindful podcast. I hope that you're feeling good, looking good, and doing better in this world than you were yesterday. So if you're brand new to the podcast, welcome, and please know that I greatly appreciate your rate and review on Apple or Spotify or wherever it is that you listen to this podcast. That goes a long way and it helps other people find the podcast too. So thank you in advance for that. And as you know, there's a day for pretty much everything. One day that I love sharing about is National Siblings Day, which happens to land on April 10th. And I wanted to share with you that I myself am the eldest of three. I'm 2.5 years younger than one of my brothers and 10 years younger than the other. And because of that difference in age, we all have a little bit of a different dynamic with one another. But one thing is for sure, I love them a ton and wouldn't have wished my childhood to be any different. Now, growing up with siblings means countless fun nights and possibly silly fights. I myself remember wrestling with one of my brothers over candy and then teaming up with him and blaming things on our younger brother before he was able to speak. But despite all of the fights and the ridiculous arguments, it's all about having a shared set of experiences with someone, which can be a really beautiful thing to have. Siblings have such a special bond that stems from a cherished childhood and cherished memories and a journey of learning how to navigate the world together. As we grow older, though, we all experience change. And whether it's external influence or internal shifts, when you grow up spending years growing up with someone, it can be hard sometimes to suddenly view them in a totally different light and accepting that change that comes along with going into adulthood. Our siblings may view us in a certain way when we're younger, but as we become adults, our personalities change and our interests change. And it's really important to understand that although who we are as people and relationship dynamics might change along the way, this all doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing. It's just part of growing up, and it's something that we should celebrate, even in our sibling relationships. I was just experiencing this very thing not too long ago. So, my baby brother, who's again 10 years younger than me, just got married a couple of months ago. And just recently, my family and I went to his new home for the very first time. And while he's still my baby brother, it was interesting to see his personality now meshed with his wife, who just so happens to be amazing. Their meshed interest in style is now displayed in their home. Now, I did notice his card collection and musical instruments were kind of tucked away in corners throughout the house. But what was really seen again is their new combined style. So, our sibling dynamics can be formed by many different factors, and some can include age, gender, culture, and different expectations. So, for example, as the older sister, my view on the way that we grew up and sometimes life in general is very different than that of my brothers. And as we grow older, our interests, our passions, and our hobbies change, which may cause a shift in our sibling dynamics. External factors such as friendship groups, education impact, or sometimes even external interests can also cause these changes in our relationships. And this can sometimes be challenging because we may remember our siblings as they were when they were kids. But having these different lived life experiences shape us in different ways when we become our own individual selves. And because we're busy living our own lives and them theirs, we almost forget that they too grew up as we were busy growing up. And when this happens in our minds, we may view them as that annoying younger sibling, let's say, with a certain perspective, when they perhaps may have very well grown up and changed that perspective. So, know that we can celebrate our sibling dynamics and the transition from childhood to adulthood by reframing our mindset and how we view each other. And it's important to allow ourselves and our siblings to grow as individuals, which we can do by understanding that every person is on their own journey. And in any relationship, we have to invest in ourselves to make sure that we're good on our own before we can show up for someone else. Finding comfort in the idea that you can and should draw boundaries as needed for the sake of your self care and your well being is important. And by allowing yourself and your siblings to embark on their own individual journeys, you establish boundaries that can actually foster a healthier relationship. Something else that can help is reframing your view of expectations. Just in the last episode, we spoke about unrealistic expectations and how they can make us feel sad or perhaps frustrated because we may feel that we are lacking or not achieving what we want. And instead of regarding change as bad, view it as natural. Perhaps your sibling isn't the same as they used to be. That doesn't mean it's a bad thing. It simply means that they are heading in a direction that is better for them in this current moment. Sometimes it's as though our siblings can get caught up in the things happening in their own lives that it's important to practice patience and flexibility, not only with them, but also with yourself. So, for example, if your sibling seems upset or disinterested in talking to you, it may not have anything to do with you. They could just be going through their own struggles and need that time for themselves. We don't always know what another person is going through, and treating them kindly can mean more to them than we may ever know. So remember that reframing our mindset to a positive one and exercising kindness, again, not only to others, but to ourselves. When we do this, we recognize the importance of having our own identities while encouraging a stronger bond in the process. Something else that's important with our siblings is engaging in open conversations. As kids and as teens, we engage in forms of communication without even realizing it. Whether it's playing a board game or playing Nintendo, dating myself, or even sitting together at dinner and having conversations, we really see how we are slowly developing if we really pay attention. But when we get older, even though communication becomes more important, sometimes it can be challenging to have these open communications because the depth that they might hold, just simply because of how old we are. We hold the weight of bigger things, and sometimes we keep these things to ourselves because we aren't sure perhaps on how to share them or how they'll be received. But it's important to share with our siblings what we are feeling. By expressing yourself and being open with your emotions and talking about the milestones you're aiming for, or perhaps the hurdles that you have going on in your life, it makes a really big difference. Now, this doesn't mean that they'll always understand exactly what you're going through, but at least they can try to hear you out and give you that space. And just as important as it is to talk about things that are happening in your life, it's perhaps even more important and more significant to listen. Being a mindful, avid listener, and again, what does that mean? It means really listening to listen and not just to respond. Being a mindful listener and finding ways to connect and to create a safe space for you and your siblings to understand each other is super duper important. And whether it's grabbing some coffee and catching up or really having a heart to heart over the phone, encourage the conversation as often as you can. Because by being open with your sibling and letting them know that they are being seen and heard, and also by you feeling seen and heard, it gives you that space to communicate things that are important to you, which can again grow heavier in weight as you get older and as your parents age as well. And despite all this, understand that despite growing up together, you and your siblings may experience different things, even though you're under the same household. My brother, who's close in age to me, always say this about our baby brother. So, for example, when we were growing up, we'd be embarrassed by taking home cooked meals to lunch. Why this was the case, I'm really not sure, but probably because it was just different. Because it can feel odd while most of your classmates are eating peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and you're digging into a thermos of mango. And for those who don't know what mango is, it's smashed green plantains and they're a very common meal in Dominican Republic. The joke is that the name came from an American eating it, and as they were enjoying the meal, they said, "Man, good!" And mango stuck. But I digress. So this was our common lunch, but because our baby brother got to eat ham and cheese sandwiches and fruit roll-ups and fun foods, we feel a little bit differently because these fruit roll-ups specifically were considered luxuries 10 years prior as my parents were just not able to afford them. So we had a completely different experience despite growing up together. I also remember when we were young that my dad used to always take us to the park bike riding or to play catch. I spoke about this in episode 138, Defying Expectation for Women, when my dad would encourage my brother to play baseball more than he encouraged me until one day he threw a ball and my brother caught it with his face, resulting in broken glasses. But when our baby brother got to the age of playing catch with my dad was going some serious heart issues and wasn't able to provide him with those same experiences. So, again, even though siblings can have similar upbringings or experiences growing up, sometimes they aren't even like one another. And I will say that also, my brothers and I are very different. There's this non shared environment theory, and it argues that though from the outside it appears that we're growing up with the same family as our siblings, in very important ways, we really aren't. And we don't experience the very same thing. And this can come from having different interests, desires, different thoughts, and even different relationships with our parents. And these varied experiences can really impact us as people and our personalities. But despite these differences, understanding them to the best of our ability shows that you care as a sibling. So even if you didn't live the exact same experience, or you might not fully grasp why someone feels the way that they do, showing effort and trying your best to not downplay the other person's feeling and meeting the other person halfway is key. So know that these differences can sometimes cause a divide, but if your siblings redirect their mindset to understanding each other and accepting their differences, they can create healthier relationships and even heal their inner child. And lastly, regardless of how old you are, show appreciation for your sibling. Just like you would want your sibling to celebrate your wins when you were all younger, it's important to celebrate your siblings' current wins throughout life. When my one brother sings along to the Philharmonic Orchestra, or when my other brother is performing percussion in his own salsa band, I absolutely love celebrating them and seeing them shine in their adult versions of themselves. Spend time together and learn what speaks to them, what's important to them as they live now, not as they lived when they were 10. How are they truly doing? And what are they really passionate about? The questions you ask and the answers they have might change over time, but that's the greatest thing about having flexibility, that we're always learning more about each other, even if it's someone that we've known our entire lives. Show them how much they mean to you can be done in so many different ways. Obviously, a text or a call, spending quality time together, getting them a gift, doing things that speak their love languages, or doing what my brothers and I do, which is sending each other texts and DMs of different reels and memes that we get. Or sometimes the two of them gang up on me just based on gender differences. Let them know that they are important to you and that you are proud of everything they've accomplished. because no matter how much time has passed, it's never a bad time to show appreciation for your sibling. And whether it be on Siblings Day or just any typical Tuesday, don't ever be afraid to show them and tell them how much they mean to you. And with that, I now invite you to join me on this short guided meditation. So, right now, regardless of where you are or what you're doing, breathe in a deep cleansing breath and exhale fully and slowly. Just bringing awareness to your breath as you reflect on the message which you just heard. Regardless of how old you are or the relationship that you have with your siblings now, or if your sibling is still living or not, think about your childhood for just a moment. Think about a happy thought where you were giggling, or a time when perhaps you were all up to no good, or scheming some kinds of plots against another childhood friends. Think about a situation that brings a smile to your face. And again, regardless of where your sibling is now, think about all the things that you appreciate about them. Their faces, personality, their laughter, their choice of words, or even their special pranking skills. Know that this energy of youth can be replicated with anyone at any point in time, even in your 30s, 40s, 50s, and beyond. Think to yourself how you can perhaps replicate that joy and carefree laughter. And perhaps it starts with a phone call to a sibling or to a family member, to a cousin or a close friend. Letting people know how much you appreciate them in the right here and right now makes a world of difference. And my friend, do know that I appreciate you for listening so very much. Have a great week. I hope you enjoyed this week's show. It would mean a ton if you took this moment to review the Free to Be Mindful podcast on the platform you catch your favorite shows. That quick and easy act lets me know what you enjoy, and it helps others find the podcast too. And of course, don't forget to subscribe so you can listen along next week. In the meantime, I welcome you to catch me on social media at Counselor V de Jesus. And as always, remember, in a world where you are free to be anything that you want to be, you are always free to be mindful. Catch you next week.